In this lecture, we're going to see how we can overload the comparison or logical operators in our C++ classes. And by comparison operators, we mean the equals operator, the not equals operator, the less than, greater than, less or equal, and greater or equal. This is what we're going to look at in this lecture. And we have two options. We can do this as member functions. We can also do this as freestanding functions that are not member functions. But first we're going to look at how we can do this as member functions, and later we're going to see how we can improve on this in this chapter. Here is a simple class. It is the point class we have been using all along, and it has our two member variables, mx and my. And here you see that we have overloaded all these operators here. They are going to be returning bool because this is a Boolean piece of information we get from this function. We want to know if something is greater than some other thing. We want to know if the relationship is less than, greater or equal, less or equal, equals or not equals. We want to do that. So we're going to do this as a member function here. We say operator greater than, for example. We pass the parameter, and then we say that this is a custom member function because we don't expect this function to modify our object here. Because this is a member function, the first parameter is going to be the current object. We are calling this member function on. And the second operand is going to be what we pass as the other parameter here. And we're going to be able to compare these things. And remember, our points are compared based on the length that they have from the origin point in our coordinate system. So this is what we're going to be using to compare our points here. Once you have the operators in place, you can then use them in the main function. For example, here we have 2 points set up, point 1 and point 2. And we can really compare them. We can see if one is greater than the other, if one is greater or equal than the other, if one is less or equal than the other, if one is equal to the other, or if one is not equal to the other. Now that you know this, we're going to head over to Visual Studio Code and play with this a little more. Okay, so here we are in our working folder. The current project is all logical operators. We want to overload all these logical operators for our point class. We are going to grab our template files pretty quick. We're going to copy them. We're going to put them in place. And then we're going to open this little guy in Visual Studio Code by dragging and dropping here. This is going to give us our main CPP file. We can clean this up if we want. Let's remove what we don't want here. And we're going to create the files for our class. We're going to put in a header file, which is going to be point.h. And we're going to put in a CPP file, which is going to be point.cpp. We can do this. And because I don't really want to type all the code, we have used this point class a gazillion times by now. I am just going to put in the code, and then I am going to explain this line by line. Let's grab the code from the CPP file and put that in place here. And let's hop over back to the header file. We have our include guards, we have our IO stream header, and then we set up a point class. It is nothing complicated. It has a public section and a private section. In the private section, we have our two member variables, which are of double type. And we are going to be manipulating these member variables here. For example, when we create a point object, we're going to pass our parameters in the constructor, and we are going to use this initializer list to pass the data to be stored in our member variables here. But the important thing for this lecture is the operators that we have overloaded as member functions here. So we have 6 operators: greater than, less than, greater or equal, less or equal, equals, equals, and not equal. These are the operators we are really interested in this chapter, and we're going to see different mechanisms that C++ provides to make setting up these kinds of operators easier. Because as we progress in the chapter, you're going to see that there are some really annoying problems you can run into if you use them on a complex class. And we're going to also see solutions to these problems, especially in C++20, because C++20 makes this really easy to work with. So these are the declarations for our operators. Again, they are done as member functions. So the first operand is going to be the current object we are calling these methods on. The second operand is going to be passed into this second parameter here. And they are a const because they are not going to be modifying our object here. If we hop over to the CPP file, we are going to see the implementations for these functions. Again, we are comparing them based on the length. And on top here, you're going to see the length function, which is going to compute the length of this point compared to the origin. So if we consider that we have an x-axis, which is horizontal like this, and we have a y-axis, the point in the middle here is going to be our origin point. And if we set up another point, we can compute the distance between these 2 points. And that's going to be the length that says if a point is greater than another. For example, if we have another point here and its length is going to be like this, and the second point is clearly less than the other, if we consider the length as a deciding factor in whether a point is greater than another. I hope this makes sense, and this is the logic we are following in the implementations of our functions here. So if we want to know if a point is greater than another, we're going to say, is the length of this point greater than the other point's length? And if that's the case, one is going to be greater. If it's not, it is not going to be greater. We follow the same logic for operator less than, operator greater or equal, operator less or equal, operator equals equals. You see that we test if the length are equal, and for operator not equal. Once we have these operators in place, we're going to head over to the main CPP file. We are going to include our point class. Let's do this pretty quick. And we are going to put in the code to play with these things. I don't want to really type all this. I'm going to just put it here and explain this to you. We set up our 2 points, and then we're going to print them out using the output stream operator that we have in our point class. Now that we go back, I realize that we have the printful method in here. We don't need this anymore now that we have our output stream operator. So we're going to take this out. And if we look at the implementation of our output stream operator, we're going to be printing the member variables mx and my. And I realized we could also add the length information because we can do this. So let's head over to the next line and say length. And we're going to put this out. We're going to say length. And this is going to be printed out as part of the information on our point object here. We're going to say length. We can call this directly, even if it's in the private section of the point object. And we're going to use the point parameter we have because this is in another function. And if we go in our main function and comment out everything else we had, we can do that. We're going to see if we can print out these points here. And this is a good practice to test your program in little parts so that you can find problems easier and faster and fix them and then move on to other parts of your program. So we're going to run the task to build with GCC because that's what we have been doing all along. Okay, this is going to build fine. We can clear and bring up a PowerShell window we can use to play with this. We're going to clear. Let's clear properly and run Rooster. We're going to see that point 1 has this length here, 14 point something, and point 2 has this length, which is 28 point something here. So our code is really working. Let's go back to the output stream operator implementation and put a space before the length here because you see that these things are cramped. We're going to build with GCC again. The build is going to be good. We can clear and run Rooster, and we're going to see point information printed out here. Now we can hop over to the main CPP file and uncomment the other things. We want to see if our operators are actually working. We're going to see if point 1 is greater than point 2. We're going to see if point 1 is less than point 2. And again, these operators are going to work because we have them overloaded in our class. If we didn't have these implementations in, let's actually take them out and really show you we can do this. We're going to comment them out. Let's go back in the CPP file and also take them out. Let's go on top and make sure we comment out the correct piece of information. If we go in the main CPP file, now these comparison operators are going to have squiggly lines because the C++ compiler won't know what we even mean here because we don't have these operators overloaded for our point class. If we try to build, we're going to have errors around the lines of no such operator for whatever object we are trying to call them on. We're going to see no such operator, no match for operator for the less than or equal operator, and we're going to have the same errors here. So for this to work, you have to have these operators set up in your class, and we're going to uncomment them to bring them back. And we can hop over to the CPP file and bring them back again. This is going to work now. Now, if we build, let's hop over to the main CPP file and see if we get the squiggly lines to go away. They don't go away. I think we need to build, so let's do that with GCC. Now the build is going to be good, and if we run, we're going to clear and run Rooster, and we're going to see the information here. 0.1 is greater than 0.2. This is going to be false because clearly the length of 0.1 is less to the length of 0.2. 0.1 is less than 0.2. This is going to be true. 0.1 is greater or equal to 0.2. This is going to be false. And all the other pieces of information are going to be printed out here, and our operators are working. I would challenge you to try and implement these operators as non-members. We have seen how we could do that. So pause the video, try to give this a try, and see if we can figure this out. For now, I am going to uncomment what we have here, and I am going to do them as non-members because I want you to see how to do that. If you didn't get this right, it is super easy to do. So we're going to comment the member implementation we have here, and I am going to head over to the header file and do them as inline functions. They are going to be freestanding global non-member functions, and we are just going to be following the same logic here. I think we can copy them and actually change them a little bit one by one. This is going to be much more fun. So for the first one, we're going to make it inline. And it's going to have a first parameter, which is going to be left. So we're going to say const point reference. We're going to say left. And the other is going to be right. I think this is much better. And it's going to be a const member function. And what we're going to do, we're going to return if left is greater than right length. We're going to be following the same logic here. And we're going to return this. And I think it is going to be much easier if we just copy and paste this function and adapt it to what we have in here. So I am just going to copy it and paste it 5 more times. Let's do this. I think this is going to do. We're going to bring this to the next line. Let's do this. We're going to bring this to the next line. And we're going to do the same. And we're going to do the same right here. And we're going to make the second one a greater than or a greater or equal operator. We can do that. Let's make sure we check if one is greater or equal than the other. The third one is going to be doing equals. We're going to do that. And the other one is going to be not equals. We can do that. And the other one is going to be not equals in the body of the function here. We're going to do this. And the other is going to be less than. So let's do this. We're going to say less than. And let's delete what we had in there and make sure we have no typo in here. And we're going to do less or equal here. And we do less or equal. And now you see we have squiggly lines. The reason is we are marking these functions as const even if they are non-member function. So there is no point in marking a non-member function as a const. So we're going to take out the const keyword here. And after we do that, we're going to still have a few squiggly lines left in. The reason is the length member function is private to the point class. So to give these functions access to private parts of our point class, we're going to mark them as friends. So we're going to do them one by one. We're going to grab the first one here. and we're going to mark it as a friend. We can go on top or below our output stream operator. We're going to say friend, and we're going to copy and paste this a couple of times. I think we can do that. Let's copy, and I'm going to put them in 5 more times. So let's do this, and let's do one more, and we're going to align this a little bit, and the other is going to be greater or equal. The other one is going to be equals, if I remember correctly. The other one is going to be not equals. The other one is going to be less than. And the last one is going to be less or equals. Now that these guys are friends, if we go back, we should see the squiggly lines going away. And we're going to take out the last const keyword here because we don't need that. And we can align these guys properly because now they are really ugly. And we are done. Our functions are implemented as non-member freestanding global functions. If we hop over to the main CPP file, we're going to see that this is going to work. We can build and run this program, and it is going to give us the exact same output we saw before. We can clear and run Rooster, and we're going to see that 0.1 is not greater than 0.2. 0.1 is less than 0.2. This is true. 0.1 is greater or equal to 2. This is going to be false. 0.1 is less or equal to 0.2. This is going to be true because it is less. And 0.1 is not equal to 0.2. And 0.1 is not equal to 0.2. This is going to be true. Our operators are working exactly like we expect. But we have one problem. These operators can be really cumbersome to put in, especially that we know that we can really overload these operators in terms of the others. For example, the not equal operator can be set up in terms of the equals operator. So, for example, what we really need is to have in the equals operator, and we can set up a mechanism to let the compiler figure out the other operators in terms of the others. And it turns out we can really implement all the other operators in terms of the less than operator that we have here. We're going to see one way C++ provides to make this job easier and only implement 2 operators and let the compiler figure out the others. And we're going to look at that in the next lecture. So go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.